The chandeliers of the Metropolitan Grand Ballroom dripped light, scattering diamonds across a sea of tuxedos and couture gowns. The air, thick with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume, vibrated with the low hum of influential voices and the clinking of champagne flutes. To Jasmine Wright, the sound was a countdown timer. She stood near the stage, a vision in an emerald silk gown that contrasted with her warm, brown skin. Her composure a fortress built over years of navigating rooms just like this one. Tonight was supposed to be the culmination of that journey, the pinnacle. She was to receive the Vanguard Award for Philanthropic Innovation, a recognition of not only her success as the founder and CEO of Phoenix Digital Solutions, but of her foundation's work in providing STEM education to underserved communities. Her best friend and COO, Amara Thompson, squeezed her arm. "You look like you're about to lead a hostile takeover, not accept a humanitarian award." Jasmine offered a small, practiced smile. "Is there a difference?" The evening's host, a silver-haired news anchor, returned to the podium. And now, to present a tribute to our honoree, we have the brilliant organizer of tonight's gala, a woman whose tireless efforts have made this our most successful fundraiser to date. Please welcome Heather Miller. Jasmine's smile froze. Heather Miller. The name was a ghost from a past she had meticulously buried. She watched as a statuesque blonde in a shimmering silver dress glided onto the stage, her smile as bright and cold as the ballroom's chandeliers. She was older now, her face etched with the sharp lines of ambition. But the pale, calculating blue eyes were the same eyes that had watched from across a dusty schoolyard in Oak Ridge, Texas, a lifetime ago. "Jasmine Wright," Heather began, her voice smooth as cream. "A name that has become synonymous with innovation, inspiration, and the American dream. But what truly defines a dream? Is it the destination or the journey?" Jasmine's heart began a slow, heavy drumbeat against her ribs. This was wrong. The air crackled with a tension only she could feel. "We've all read the articles," Heather continued, her gaze sweeping the room before landing on Jasmine. "The rise from poverty, the triumph over adversity. It's a powerful story, but stories are often curated. Tonight, we wanted to share a more authentic look at where Jasmine's journey truly began." On the massive screens flanking the stage, the professionally produced tribute video, the one Jasmine's team had approved, featuring interviews with grateful students and community leaders, flickered and died. It was replaced by grainy, handheld footage. A dilapidated paint-peeled house appeared on screen, its porch sagging. This was her childhood home, not the version she described in polished interviews, but the raw, unfiltered reality of it. The music shifted from an uplifting orchestral score to a mournful, gritty blues track. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jasmine stood ramrod straight, her expression unreadable, a marble statue amidst the shifting tides of confusion. The footage cut to old, unflattering photos of a younger Jasmine, awkward, dressed in ill-fitting clothes, her face a mask of teenage anxiety. Then, a clip from a local news report from over 20 years ago. A somber-faced reporter stood in front of a shuttered factory. The sign read, "Oak Ridge Manufacturing." Jasmine's father, Daniel Wright, was shown being escorted from the building by security, his face a portrait of shame and defeat. The caption on the screen read, "Local foreman implicated in embezzlement scandal." A collective gasp went through the ballroom. This was a lie, a vicious distortion of the past. Her father had been a victim, not a criminal. The video montage continued, a cruel tapestry woven from half-truths and painful memories. It showed the foreclosure sign on their lawn. It showed a clip of Jasmine from a public access college scholarship interview, her voice trembling as she spoke of her family's financial hardships. The clips were edited to strip them of context, to remove the dignity and resilience, leaving only the stark impression of poverty and disgrace. It was a masterpiece of character assassination, designed to frame her not as an inspiration, but as an imposter whose success was built on a foundation of shame she desperately tried to hide. Heather's voiceover returned, dripping with false sincerity. True strength isn't about forgetting where you come from. It's about owning every part of it. Tonight, we celebrate Jasmine Wright for the incredible distance she has traveled. From that. The video ended, leaving a stark image of the derelict house lingering on the screens. A suffocating silence fell over the ballroom. Hundreds of pairs of eyes, investors, peers, rivals, were fixed on Jasmine, their expressions a mixture of pity, morbid curiosity, and thinly veiled contempt. They saw a fraud, an interloper whose carefully constructed facade had just been shattered. Heather stood on stage, basking in the silent chaos she had created. Her eyes met Jasmine's, and, for a fleeting second, the mask of polished benevolence dropped, revealing a look of pure, unadulterated triumph. It was a look that said, "I told you I would ruin you." The news anchor, flustered, cleared his throat. "Well, thank you, Heather, for that candid presentation. And now, I invite to the stage our honoree, Jasmine Wright." A smattering of hesitant, awkward applause broke the silence. Amara grabbed her hand, her grip like iron. "Don't go up there. We're leaving." "No," Jasmine whispered, her voice surprisingly steady. She gently detached her hand from Amara's and started toward the stage. Each step felt like a mile. The collective stare of the audience, a physical weight pressing down on her. The suffocating opulence of the room suddenly felt like a cage. The clinking of glasses now sounded like the locking of a cell door. She ascended the small staircase, her movements fluid and deliberate. She walked past Heather without a glance, her focus solely on the podium. She adjusted the microphone, the metallic click echoing in the hushed room. She looked out at the sea of faces, her gaze calm, her posture regal. The fortress held. "Thank you, Heather," she said, her voice clear and devoid of any discernible emotion. "For that reminder." She paused, letting the two words hang in the air, imbued with 1,000 unspoken meanings. It is true that stories are often curated. We select the chapters we believe will inspire. We polish the moments of pain until they gleam with the patina of resilience. We do this for others. But perhaps we also do it for ourselves. She turned her head slightly, her eyes finally locking with Heather's. "But you are right. A journey is not defined by its curated highlights. It is defined by every single step. The ones in the mud, as much as the ones on the marble. The difference is, some of us learn to walk through the mud without letting it stain our soul." She turned back to the audience. "My father was an honest man who was betrayed. My family lost everything. I did not travel a great distance from that past. I carried it with me. It is the fuel that powers my work, the bedrock of my foundation, and the reason I understand that providing an opportunity is not charity, but an investment in human potential." She picked up the heavy crystal award from the podium, her grip firm. "I accept this award not in spite of my journey, but because of it. Thank you." She did not wait for the applause. With the same unnerving calm, she walked off the stage, through the stunned crowd that parted for her like the Red Sea, and out of the grand ballroom without looking back. The fortress had not crumbled. It had simply pulled up the drawbridge, concealing the declaration of war that had just been signed within its walls. The sterile, echoing tension of the Phoenix Digital boardroom was a world away from the suffocating opulence of the gala. The view from the 40th floor panoramic window showed a crisp, clear Atlanta skyline, a city of glass and steel ambition that mirrored Jasmine's own. 3 days had passed since the gala, 3 days of carefully managed crisis control. Her PR team had spun the incident as a tasteless and unprofessional production choice, while Jasmine herself had remained silent, a move that only amplified the speculation swirling in the business world. Amara paced in front of the window, her phone pressed to her ear. No. Herald. A drop of 2% in pre-market trading is not a 5-alarm fire. It's a reaction to gossip. We're issuing a statement reaffirming Q4 projections this afternoon. Yes. I'll handle it. She ended the call with a frustrated sigh. The board is getting jittery. They're worried the incident makes you look unstable. Vulnerable, Jasmine corrected, her voice flat. She sat at the head of the long obsidian table, a single file in front of her. They're worried it makes me look vulnerable. And, in our world, vulnerability is blood in the water. So what's our next move? Amara asked, finally, sitting down opposite her. We can't just let this go. Heather Miller didn't just embarrass you. She attacked your credibility. She went after your father's memory. I know, Jasmine said quietly. She opened the file. It contained a single sheet of paper, a printout from a private investigator's preliminary report. On it were 2 names, Heather Miller and Thomas Miller. Beneath them, a location, Oak Ridge, Texas. Oak Ridge, Amara read over her shoulder. That's your hometown, isn't it? It is, Jasmine confirmed. Thomas Miller owned a small hardware store on Main Street. His daughter, Heather, was a year ahead of me in school. She was one of them, the popular, well-off kids who looked at families like mine like we were dirt beneath their shoes. After the factory closed, after everything happened with my father, she was the worst. She's the one who started the rumor that he'd stolen the money to run away with another woman. She made my last year of high school a living hell. My God, Jess, why didn't you ever tell me? What was there to tell? It was just high school bullying. I put it behind me. I moved on. I never thought I'd see her again. She tapped the paper. I want to know everything. Why is she in Atlanta? How did she end up as the organizer for the city's most prestigious charity gala? And what has she been doing for the last 20 years? I need to understand how this ghost from my past suddenly materialized with a knife aimed at my back. I'll have the investigator do a deep dive, Amara said, her voice hardening with protective anger. Financials, employment history, social connections. We'll map out her entire life. Good. Jasmine closed the folder. The cold resolve that had carried her out of the ballroom had now solidified into a clear, sharp-edged strategy. This was no longer just about a personal grudge. It was a threat to everything she had built. Over the next week, the investigators' reports trickled in, painting a picture of Heather's life. After high school, she had attended a state university, majoring in marketing. She'd bounced between jobs, event planning for a hotel chain, fundraising for a struggling museum, marketing for a series of failed startups. There was a pattern of short tenures and lateral moves, a career that never quite launched. 2 years ago, she had married a wealthy real estate developer in Atlanta, a man twice her age with powerful city connections. It was his influence that had landed her the prestigious role of chairing the Metropolitan Gala. She's a social climber who finally hit the jackpot, Amara summarized, reviewing the latest report in Jasmine's office. But there's more. Look at this. She pointed to a section on Heather's father, Thomas Miller. After the Oak Ridge factory scandal, His hardware store went bankrupt within a year. The report says he lost everything. 6 months after that, he died. The official cause was a heart attack, but the investigator noted that local rumor at the time was that he'd taken his own life. Jasmine felt a chill crawl up her spine. She remembered Thomas Miller as a quiet, kind man who always gave her a piece of candy when her father took her to the store. "She blames my family," she whispered, the pieces clicking into place. "She blames my father for her father's ruin." "It looks that way," Amara agreed. "Her entire vendetta is built on a 20-year-old lie." The calculated cruelty of the gala attack now made perfect, horrifying sense. Heather hadn't just wanted to embarrass a high school rival. She wanted to inflict the same public shame and financial ruin she believed Jasmine's family had inflicted on hers. This was a long-nurtured, deeply personal revenge. "There's one more thing," Amara said, her tone shifting. "I was looking into the gala's board and major sponsors. Guess who sits on the board of 3 of the event's largest corporate donors, and also happens to be a major player in Atlanta real estate?" Her husband Jasmine guessed. "No, Marcus Thorne." The name landed in the room like a stone. Marcus Thorne, the ruthless founder of Thorne Capital, a corporate raider known for hostile takeovers and stripping companies for parts. He was a shark who smelled blood from miles away. And he was an investor Jasmine had repeatedly and publicly rebuffed, refusing his offers to buy a stake in Phoenix Digital. "Thorne and Heather have been seen at several social events together," Amara continued. "The investigator thinks her husband is trying to curry favor with him for a new development project. This might not just be about Heather's personal revenge. Jazz, what if Thorne is using her? What if the gala was a calculated move to destabilize you, to make you look weak in front of the investment community, softening you up for another takeover attempt?" The scope of the situation had just expanded exponentially. This wasn't just a ghost from her past. It was a potential alliance between that ghost and the biggest threat to her company's future. "I need to meet with her," Jasmine said decisively. "Are you insane?" Amara shot back. "Why would you give her the satisfactions?" "This isn't about satisfaction. It's about information," Jasmine countered, her mind already working through the strategic angles. "She thinks she has me on the defensive. She'll be arrogant, overconfident. I want to look her in the eye and understand the depth of this hatred. And I want to find out, without her realizing it, just how close she is to Marcus Thorne." She stood up and walked to the window, gazing down at the city she had conquered. She has built her entire life's narrative around a lie. I'm going to give her the opportunity to tell it to my face. And when she does, she's going to give me the weapons I need to dismantle it. The restaurant Jasmine chose was a study in calculated warmth, tucked away in a quiet corner of Buckhead. Aria was known for its privacy and its power broker clientele. Every smile from the staff was a transaction. Every hushed conversation a potential deal. Jasmine had booked a secluded corner booth, a small table for 2 that felt both intimate and gladiatorial. She arrived exactly on time, dressed in a simple but impeccably tailored cream-colored dress. Her message was clear, unbothered, elegant, in control. She ordered a sparkling water and waited. Heather arrived 5 minutes late. A deliberate power play. She wore a severe black dress, the color of mourning or war. Her smile was a thin, sharp line. "Jasmine, thank you for reaching out. I must admit, I was surprised." "I thought we should talk," Jasmine said, her tone perfectly neutral. She gestured to the seat opposite her. The gala was quite memorable. "I'm glad you thought so," Heather replied, sliding into the booth. Her eyes scanned the restaurant. noting the other patrons, assessing the power in the room. I felt it was important to present a full picture. Authenticity is so rare these days. Don't you think the passive aggression was a masterclass? Each polite word, a poisoned dart. Authenticity is based on truth. Heather, Jasmine said calmly. And the video you showed was not the truth. It was a distortion. Heather gave a delicate shrug. It was footage. It was public record. I'm sorry if the reality of your past is uncomfortable for you. My past isn't uncomfortable for me. Your revision of it is. Jasmine leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping. My father was not an embezzler. He was a scapegoat. A good man who took the fall for a crime he didn't commit to protect his family from something worse. A flicker of genuine emotion, a flash of bitter anger crossed Heather's face, before being replaced by a mask of cold pity. Is that the story you tell yourself? It must be comforting. But I remember the truth. I remember what happened to my family. To my father. I remember your father, too. Jasmine said softly. Thomas was a good man. I'm sorry for what happened to him. To his business. Don't you dare say his name, Heather hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. You don't have the right. Your father, Daniel Wright, destroyed him. He partnered with that monster, bled the company dry with his schemes. And when it all fell apart, he pointed the finger at everyone else and walked away. My father lost everything because of him. His business, his reputation, his will to live. He put his trust in your father, and it cost him his life. The raw, aching grief in her voice was undeniable. For 20 years, this toxic narrative had been the central truth of her existence. She truly believed it. That's not what happened, Jasmine said, her voice firm but gentle. They were both victims. Heather. Someone else was pulling the strings. Heather let out a short, incredulous laugh. Oh, of course. The mysterious someone else. How convenient. You build your empire on the ruins of my family, and you still have the audacity to sit here and spin fairy tales. You think because you have money now, you can rewrite history. You can't. I was there. I saw the foreclosure sign on our store. I saw the shame in my father's eyes. A shame your family put there. Jasmine held her gaze, refusing to flinch. I know what I saw, too. And I know my father. This vendetta you have. This need to see me fall. It's built on a lie. The only lie here is the one you've been selling to the world. Heather shot back, her composure cracking. The polished, perfect CEO who pulled herself up by her bootstraps. You hide where you came from because you're ashamed. And you should be. She paused. Then delivered her intended checkmate. But don't worry. Some people are starting to see the real you. People like Marcus Thorne. He finds your story particularly interesting. There it was. The confirmation. Jasmine's expression remained placid, betraying none of the alarm bells ringing in her head. You and Marcus have been spending time together. Heather's smile was triumphant. Marcus is a very discerning man. He appreciates authenticity. He understands that empires built on sand are bound to crumble. He's been looking for an entry point into the cybersecurity space for a while now. He thinks Phoenix Digital has potential, once it's under the right leadership. The threat was no longer veiled. It was a declaration. Heather wasn't just an agent of chaos. She was a willing pawn, a weapon being aimed by a far more dangerous player. It was a pleasure seeing you again. Jasmine, Heather said, placing her napkin on the table. She stood, looking down at Jasmine with a dismissive air. It's just wonderful to see someone from your background achieve so much. You must have worked twice as hard. The condescending jab, wrapped in the guise of a compliment, hung in the air. It was the same brand of casual cruelty she'd wielded in the high school hallways. "I did," Jasmine replied, her voice dangerously quiet. "Which is why I will work 4 times as hard to protect what I've built. From you. From Thorn. From anyone." Heather's smile faltered for a second, a brief crack in her armor of arrogance. She turned and walked away, leaving Jasmine alone in the quiet, clinking silence of the restaurant, the battle lines now irrevocably drawn. The conversation with Heather left a bitter taste in Jasmine's mouth that had nothing to do with the untouched food on her plate. She returned not to her sterile office, but to her sprawling home in Buckhead, the one place that was a sanctuary. The house was quiet. Her triplet sons, Zion, Isaiah, and Elijah, still at their respective after-school activities. In the silence, the ghosts of Oak Ridge felt closer than ever. In her home office, a room lined with books on code and biographies of great leaders, she unlocked a heavy, fireproof safe. From it, she retrieved a worn leather-bound box filled with her father's things, the few possessions he had insisted on keeping after they lost the house. There were faded photographs, his old engineering schematics, a handful of letters, and his journals. She hadn't opened the box in years. It was a reliquary of a past she had compartmentalized, a pain she had converted into fuel. Now, she needed to examine the engine itself. She spread the contents across her large mahogany desk. A photograph caught her eye. It showed 2 men in work clothes, arms slung around each other's shoulders, smiling in front of the Oak Ridge manufacturing sign. One was her father, Daniel Wright, young and full of hope. The other was a man she recognized instantly as a younger Thomas Miller. They didn't look like a foreman and a distrustful business partner. They looked like friends, partners. But there was a third man in the photo, standing slightly off to the side. He was younger, dressed in a suit that looked out of place against the factory backdrop, a sharp, predatory smile on his face. He was instantly recognizable, a young, hungry Marcus Thorne. Her blood ran cold. Thorne wasn't a new player in this drama. He was part of the original sin. She picked up one of her father's journals, its pages brittle with age. She'd read them before, but only for comfort, for a connection to the man she'd lost too soon. Now, she read with an investigator's eye, searching for clues. His handwriting, usually a strong, clear script, grew frantic and messy in the entries from the final months before the factory closed. October 12th. Thorne is pushing the new supply chain numbers again. They don't add up. Tom and I ran our own projections, and there's a massive discrepancy. Thorne says it's aggressive accounting, a way to attract new investors. It feels wrong. It feels dishonest. October 28th. Met with Tom at the diner. He's scared. His store's credit line is tied to the factory's performance. Thorne assured him his investment was safe, that he was a preferred local partner. I told Tom to be careful. Thorne's smile doesn't reach his eyes. November 5th. A recurring symbol. A bluebonnet. My father had scribbled a small, delicate drawing of the Texas state flower next to this entry. Thorne mentioned the bluebonnet account today in passing, said it was for special acquisitions. When I asked for details, he shut me down, said it was above my pay grade. Something is very wrong. Jasmine's mind raced. The bluebonnet, the state flower of Texas, a symbol of home, of their shared roots in Oak Ridge. Thorne had twisted it into a name for a secret ledger. She frantically flipped through the rest of the journal. The final entries were a portrait of a man in despair. December 2nd. The auditors are coming. Thorne is calm. Too calm. He pulled me aside today. He said there's a hole in the books and someone needs to fill it. He said if I take the blame for mismanagement, He'll make sure my family is taken care of. He said if I don't, he'll make sure the police see evidence that implicates me in a much larger crime. He mentioned Jasmine. He said it would be a shame for a girl with her potential to grow up with a father in federal prison. December 10th. It's over. I did it. I signed the papers. They called it gross negligence. I'm fired, disgraced. But Jasmine is safe. They can take my name, my reputation. They can't take my daughter's future. Tom doesn't understand. He came to the house, shouting, called me a thief. I couldn't tell him the truth. Thorne threatened him, too. Threatened his family. I had to let him hate me to keep him safe. God forgive me. Tears streamed down Jasmine's face, blurring the ink on the page. For 2 decades, she had carried the shame of her father's public failure. She had believed he was a good man who had made a terrible mistake. But the truth was so much worse and so much more noble. He wasn't a victim of circumstance. He was a hero who had sacrificed his own reputation to save his family from a ruthless predator. He had willingly put on the cloak of a villain to protect them from a monster. And he had tried to protect Thomas Miller too, by bearing his friend's hatred in silence. The weight of this new understanding was crushing, but it was also clarifying. Her father hadn't been broken. He had been forged in a fire she never knew existed. And Heather's entire life of bitterness, her all-consuming quest for revenge, was directed at the wrong man. They were both daughters of victims, their lives irrevocably shaped by the same crime, perpetrated by the same man. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her reverie. It was an alert from her Phoenix digital security team, a notification she had set up weeks ago. A massive, anonymous block of Phoenix digital shares was being acquired through a series of shell corporations. The volume was just below the threshold that would trigger a mandatory SEC filing. It was a ghost, accumulating power in the shadows. A stealth attack. She knew, with chilling certainty, who was behind it. Marcus Thorne wasn't just using Heather to play mind games anymore. He was making his move. The war was no longer on the horizon. It was at the gates. The stealth acquisition of Phoenix Digital shares was a classic Thorne maneuver, death by 1,000 cuts. Small enough purchases to avoid regulatory alarms, but relentless enough to accumulate a significant minority stake. By the time the hostile takeover bid became public, he would already have a powerful foothold. "He's boxing us in," Jasmine stated, her voice a low hum of controlled fury. She was in a late-night strategy session with Amara and Eleanor Patel, Phoenix's sharp-as-a-tack chief legal counsel. The boardroom was dark, save for the glow of monitors displaying stock market data and corporate ownership charts. He's using Heather's public attack to create a perception of instability, driving the share price down just enough to make his quiet acquisition cheaper. It's a coordinated assault on 2 fronts: public perception and market control. His shell corporations are registered in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. They're legal fortresses, almost impossible to trace back to him definitively without a subpoena, Eleanor reported, tapping at her laptop. But the pattern of trading is his signature. We can't prove it in a courtroom yet, but we know it's him. "So we fight back," Amara said, her fists clenched. "We initiate a poison pill defense. We buy back our own stock to drive the price up. We go to the press and expose him." "Not yet," Jasmine countered, her mind piecing together a more intricate strategy. "A poison pill could hurt our own shareholders, and going public without irrefutable proof makes us look paranoid and defensive. It plays right into his hands. He wants me to panic. He wants me to make a rash move. We're not going to do that." She turned to Eleanor. "I need you to start preparing for a proxy battle. Analyze our shareholder base. Identify the loyalists, the swing votes, the institutional investors who can be swayed. We need to be ready for the moment he steps out of the shadows. To Amara, she said, I want our internal security team, the A-team, to do a deep dive forensic analysis, not on Thorne's finances, but on the collapse of Oak Ridge Manufacturing. There has to be a paper trail, a digital ghost of that bluebonnet account. 20 years is a long time, but money never truly disappears. It just changes shape. As her team mobilized, Jasmine felt a profound shift within herself. The fight was no longer just about protecting her company or avenging a personal slight. It was about clearing her father's name. It was for Daniel Wright, the man who had worn a cloak of shame so she could have a future. And, in a strange and complicated way, it was for Thomas Miller, too. The days that followed were a blur of relentless work. By day, Jasmine was the picture of a confident CEO, reassuring her board, rallying her employees, and projecting an aura of absolute control to the financial press. By night, she and a small, trusted circle became forensic archaeologists, digging through the ruins of a 2-decade-old corporate crime. Her son, Isaiah, the analytical thinker of her 3 boys, became an unlikely ally, fascinated by the mystery. He used his prodigious coding skills to help the security team build algorithms to search for digital breadcrumbs in old, archived financial databases. Dad's journals mentioned Thorne used an offshore bank called Meridian Trust, Isaiah said one evening, his eyes glued to a screen filled with scrolling lines of code. I'm running a search for any transaction connected to Thorne, Oak Ridge, and that bank in the 6 months before the factory went under. Meanwhile, Heather Miller, emboldened by her perceived victory at the gala and the whispers of instability around Phoenix Digital, escalated her own campaign. She became a fixture in Atlanta's high society, subtly poisoning the well against Jasmine at every charity luncheon and political fundraiser. Her narrative was consistent and effective. Jasmine was an unstable arriviste, a product of a troubled past, who was cracking under the pressure of her own success. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place on a rainy Tuesday night. Jasmine was in her home office, cross-referencing her father's journal with a list of Oak Ridge Manufacturing's board members from the time. Amara was on a video call, sharing the latest findings from the security team. We found it, Amara said, her voice electric with excitement. It was buried in the code of an old accounting software program Oak Ridge used, a hidden subroutine. It rerouted fractions of a cent from thousands of transactions, payroll, supply orders, everything into a single account. A classic salami slicing scheme. Over 2 years, it siphoned off millions. The bluebonnet account, Jasmine breathed. Exactly. And we traced the final wire transfer from that account, the day before the auditors arrived. The entire balance was moved to a numbered account at Meridian Trust in the Cayman Islands. Can you link the account to Thorne? Jasmine pressed. Not directly. The account was opened by a shell corporation. But Amara's image on the screen broke into a grin. The incorporation papers for that shell company were signed by a junior associate at Thorne's law firm at the time. And guess who just turned whistleblower in a completely unrelated insider trading case against one of Thorne's rivals? The associate, Jasmine said, her heart pounding. He's looking for a deal with the SEC, and he's willing to talk about every shady thing he was ever asked to do. Eleanor is already on a plane to meet with his lawyer. It was the smoking gun, the irrefutable proof that linked Marcus Thorne directly to the embezzlement that destroyed Oak Ridge Manufacturing and 2 families. But as the wave of triumph washed over her, it was followed by a chilling realization. This evidence proved her father's innocence. It proved Thomas Miller's innocence. But it also proved that Heather's entire life, her identity, her burning quest for vengeance, was built on a catastrophic lie. Revealing the truth wouldn't just expose a corporate predator. It would shatter a woman's soul. Before she could fully process this moral complexity, her phone rang. It was Harold Fitzgerald, the most nervous member of her board. "Jasmine, it's happening," he said, his voice trembling with panic. "Marcus Thorne just went public. He's announced a tender offer for Phoenix Digital. He's claiming he has the backing of a significant block of shareholders. He's called for an emergency board meeting for Friday to vote on his proposal, a vote to remove you as CEO." The moment of truth had arrived. Thorne had stepped out of the shadows, confident he had already won. He had set the stage for her public execution. What he didn't know was that Jasmine was no longer fighting a defensive battle. She was about to bring a ghost story to life, and the ghosts were coming for him. The all-is-lost moment was not one of despair for Jasmine, but of chilling clarity. Thorne's maneuver was aggressive, designed to induce panic and force a disorganized defense. He had consolidated his secretly acquired shares, courted disgruntled institutional investors, and now, with Heather's help in poisoning the social and professional wells, he believed he had the momentum to sweep in and take control. The emergency board meeting was the kill shot, a public spectacle where he would formally decapitate her company. Jasmine felt a strange calm settle over her. For weeks, she had been a detective, piecing together a crime from the whispers of the past. Now, she had to become a general. "He's given us 48 hours, she said to Amara and Eleanor, who had assembled in her office within the hour. "He thinks we'll spend that time scrambling, trying to whip votes, making frantic calls. He's expecting a defense. We're going to give him a prosecution." The plan they devised was audacious and incredibly risky. It wasn't about financial projections or corporate strategy. It was about narrative. Thorne had built his career on crafting powerful, predatory narratives. Jasmine was about to counter with one of her own, one grounded in a truth that was more damning than any balance sheet. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of meticulous preparation. Eleanor worked with the whistleblower's legal team, securing a sworn affidavit detailing Thorne's methods, including the creation of the Blue Bonnet account and the Meridian Trust Shell Corporation. The document was an explosive testament to a career built on fraud. Amara, meanwhile, worked her network, reaching out to keyboard members and investors. She didn't try to persuade them or beg for their loyalty. Instead, she delivered a simple, cryptic message: "Postpone your judgment until the meeting. There is a story you need to hear. It's not about Q4 earnings. It's about the fundamental character of the man trying to take over this company." Jasmine's sons played their own crucial roles. Zion, the natural leader, became the gatekeeper of their home, handling the influx of calls and messages with a maturity that made Jasmine's heart swell with pride. Elijah, the quiet artist, sensed his mother's immense stress and provided a silent, steadying presence, ensuring she ate, rested, and found moments of peace amidst the storm. And Isaiah, the tech prodigy, delivered the masterstroke. "I found something else." "Mom," he said, his face illuminated by the glow of his monitor late the night before the meeting. The old Oak Ridge accounting software, the subroutine that created the Blue Bonnet account. It had a kill switch, a backdoor that could only be activated by a specific admin password. It was designed to erase itself without a trace. Thorne must have forgotten about it. "Can you activate it?" Jasmine asked, leaning over his shoulder. "No, but I can show what it does," Isaiah explained. "I've created a simulation. It will demonstrate, in real time, how the embezzlement scheme worked and how it was designed to be erased. It's the digital fingerprint of the crime itself." Jasmine spent the final hours before the meeting, not with lawyers or bankers, but in her father's journal. She wasn't just memorizing facts. She was absorbing his voice, his pain, his integrity. She was preparing to speak not just as a CEO, but as a daughter. On Friday morning, a storm rolled into Atlanta, mirroring the turmoil about to be unleashed in the Phoenix Digital boardroom. Rain lashed against the 40th floor windows as the board members filed in, their faces grim. The room was a landscape of sterile, echoing tension, the polished mahogany table reflecting the stormy sky outside. Marcus Thorne was the last to arrive. He was impeccably dressed, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his expression one of confident, predatory charm. He moved through the room like a king taking possession of a new territory, shaking hands, exuding power. Heather Miller was at his side, her presence a shocking breach of protocol. She wasn't a board member or a shareholder. She was a trophy, a symbol of the chaos she had helped create, now present to witness her final revenge. Her eyes met Jasmine's, and she gave a small, triumphant smirk. Jasmine sat at the head of the table, flanked by Amara and Eleanor. She was a portrait of stillness in the center of the hurricane. Thorne began the meeting, his voice smooth and commanding. He laid out his case with ruthless efficiency, criticizing Jasmine's volatile leadership, citing the recent stock fluctuations, and presenting his tender offer as a move to stabilize and unlock the true value of Phoenix Digital. It was a compelling performance, a symphony of corporate jargon and veiled insults. The market has lost confidence in current leadership, he concluded, his gaze sweeping the table. It is time for a change. I am calling for a vote of no confidence in Jasmine Wright as CEO, to be followed by a vote to accept the acquisition offer from Thorne Capital. The room was thick with tension. The older board members, men like Harold Fitzgerald, shifted uncomfortably, ready to capitulate. Then, Jasmine spoke. Her voice was quiet, yet it commanded the attention of everyone in the room. Thank you. Marcus, that was a very compelling story. She rose from her chair, but did not move to the podium. She remained at her seat, an intimate, powerful gesture. Before we vote on the future of this company, I would like to tell you another story. It's about a different company, a smaller one, in a small Texas town called Oak Ridge. A flicker of surprise, then irritation, crossed Thorne's face. Heather stiffened in her chair. This story is about two friends, Daniel Wright and Thomas Miller. Jasmine continued, her eyes finding Heather's. One was a brilliant engineer. The other, a proud local business owner. They believed in their town, and they believed in the young, charismatic investor from the big city who promised to save their local factory and bring prosperity to their community. She paused, letting her words sink in. That investor's name was Marcus Thorne. She began to walk slowly around the table, her voice never rising, yet filling every corner of the room. She told the story from her father's journal, the story of manipulated numbers, of a friend's trust, of a secret account named after a wildflower. As she spoke, the large monitor behind her, which had been displaying stock charts, came to life. It showed the photograph of the three men her father, Thomas Miller, and a young Marcus Thorne. This investor was not a savior. He was a thief, Jasmine stated, her voice hardening. He created a scheme to bleed the company dry, siphoning millions into an offshore account, a scheme he called the Blue Bonnet account. On the screen, Isaiah's simulation began to run. Lines of code scrolled, and a visual representation showed money being diverted from dozens of transactions into a single, growing pool. The board members leaned forward, mesmerized and horrified. Thorne's face had become a mask of stone. These are baseless allegations, a desperate fantasy from a failing executive. Are they? Jasmine countered. She nodded to Eleanor, who placed a single, bound document in the center of the table. This is the sworn affidavit of Mr. Thorne's former legal associate, detailing the creation of the Blue Bonnet account and the shell corporation used to hide the stolen funds at Meridian Trust. A wave of audible gasps swept through the room. Board members scrambled to look at the document. Jasmine's eyes locked on Heather, whose face had gone deathly pale. Her entire body was trembling. The triumphant smirk was gone, replaced by a look of dawning, gut-wrenching horror. But the investor was not just a thief. Jasmine continued, her voice softening with a sadness that was more powerful than any rage. He was also a coward. He needed a scapegoat. So he went to one of the friends, the engineer, Daniel Wright, my father. He threatened him. He threatened his family. He threatened his young daughter. He forced my father to sign a confession of mismanagement, to take the fall for a crime he didn't commit. Tears were now openly streaming down Heather's face. She looked at Thorne, her expression pleading, as if begging him to deny it, to say it wasn't true. Thorne refused to meet her gaze, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape that didn't exist. And what of the other friend? Jasmine's voice was barely a whisper now. Thomas Miller. He lost everything. He believed his friend had betrayed him. He died of a broken heart, never knowing the truth, never knowing that he, too, was a victim of the man he trusted. She stopped directly behind Heather's chair. For 20 years, you have been carrying the weight of this story. Heather, you have let it poison your life. You have let it drive you to seek revenge against the wrong person. The man who destroyed your father is not my father. He is sitting right next to you. All eyes turned to Thorne. The predator was now the prey, cornered and exposed. His face was slick with sweat, his mask of charm shattered, revealing the craven fraud beneath. This is a fabrication, he stammered, his voice losing its confident timbre. A desperate, last-ditch effort to— Is it? Jasmine said, walking back to her seat at the head of the table. She looked at the stunned faces of her board members. This is the man who wants to lead Phoenix Digital, a man who built his first fortune on the ruins of 2 families, on the grave of an honest man, and on the public disgrace of another. This is his character. This is his foundation. She sat down, her posture exuding an authority that was absolute. Now, I believe there was a call for a vote. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of the rain against the glass and the sound of Heather Miller's quiet, soul-shattering sobs. The war was over. The truth had been the only weapon she needed. Weeks after the explosive board meeting, the storm had passed, both literally and figuratively. The Atlanta sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. The fallout from Jasmine's revelations had been swift and decisive. Marcus Thorne, facing imminent SEC investigation and the public implosion of his reputation, had vanished from the corporate landscape, his tender offer withdrawn, his empire beginning to crumble under the weight of his past crimes. The board of Phoenix Digital, shaken and humbled, had offered Jasmine their unanimous, unequivocal support. Heather Miller had disappeared. She had left the boardroom in a state of shock, a woman whose entire reality had been dismantled in the space of 20 minutes. Jasmine had heard through the society grapevine that Heather had left her husband and moved out of the city, seeking an anonymity she had once fought so hard to escape. Jasmine felt no triumph in her rival's collapse, only a profound and weary sadness for a life consumed by a misguided quest for vengeance. She had made a choice not to pursue any action against Heather, seeing her as the final victim of Thorne's original crime. Justice, she decided, was not about punishment, but about restoration. and restoration was now her focus. The final scene of her long battle did not take place in a gleaming boardroom or an opulent ballroom, but on a dusty patch of land on the outskirts of Oak Ridge, Texas. She stood before the rusted, skeletal remains of the old Oak Ridge manufacturing factory. The chain-link fence was overgrown with weeds. The windows were shattered, and the once proud sign was faded and peeling. It was a monument to shared pain, a tombstone for the dreams of two families. Using her personal resources, Jasmine had purchased the derelict property and the surrounding land. Today was the groundbreaking. Amara and her son stood beside her. A small crowd of local townspeople and journalists had gathered. Jasmine stepped up to a simple podium set up in front of the factory's gate. She wore not a power suit, but simple jeans and a blazer. "Many of you remember what this place used to be," she began, her voice carrying on the warm Texas breeze. "It was a place of promise, a source of pride for this town, and for many, its closing brought hardship and pain. My family knew that pain. Another family, the Millers, knew that pain as well." She looked out at the faces in the crowd, some of whom she recognized from her childhood. For a long time, this place has been a symbol of what was lost, a symbol of betrayal and ruin. Today, we begin the work of turning it into something new, a symbol of what can be built. She gestured to an artist's rendering on an easel beside her. It showed a modern, light-filled building, surrounded by green spaces. "On this land, we will build the Wright Miller Foundation for Entrepreneurial Spirit," she announced. The name drew a few surprised murmurs from the crowd. "It will be a non-profit incubator and community center, providing grants, mentorship, and resources to families and individuals in this region who have a great idea but lack the opportunity to see it through. It will be a place where we turn the hard lessons of the past into the foundations of the future. We will honor the memories of Daniel Wright and Thomas Miller, not by dwelling on how their dreams ended, but by creating a place where new dreams can begin." It was an act of profound grace, an act that transformed a symbol of their family's shared tragedy into an engine for healing and positive change. It was a demonstration that true power, the kind that endures, is not found in destruction, but in creation. Later, after the speeches were done, and the ceremonial first shovelful of dirt had been turned, Jasmine walked alone toward the old factory gate. Her sons watched her from a distance, understanding her need for a private moment. She ran her hand over the rusted metal of the old sign, tracing the letters of her town's name. At the base of the post, pushing its way through a crack in the dry earth, was a single, resilient wildflower, a bluebonnet. She smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile that reached her eyes. The ghosts of the past were finally at rest. Her father's name was cleared, her own future, and the future of her sons, was secure. She had faced down the monster from her past, and, instead of becoming a monster herself, had chosen to build a garden in the wasteland he had left behind. Her journey was not over, but a new, more hopeful chapter had just begun.